week I'm very pleased to welcome Jesper Toubol, who is Vice President of Elements and Moulds at Lego. Hi, Jesper.
Hi, great to be here.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us. So we're going to get into some conversations around some of the really interesting work that you're doing there in the manufacturing space. But I guess just set a little bit of the scene. Could you just start by telling us about your sort of personal background and how you've taken the journey to where you are today?
Yeah. So my personal background, I've been with Lego for 12 years. I worked in various roles, started in planning, also worked with product development, worked in doing, packaging equipment. And now recently, since 2014, I've been working with the core of Lego, which of course is to do the technical specification of all the Lego bricks. We deep insights into a lot around how you do a Lego brick, of course. There's a lot of things on specification of how to make Lego bricks. And then I do all the injection molds. So Lego is an injection molding company. So my responsibility is to design molds, optimize molds, make molds, buy molds, qualify molds, and get them up and running in production. Okay. So that's my life. I run an organization with around 450 mainly based in Billund, Denmark, but also based in China, in Singapore, in Hungary, and in Mexico.
Okay, so diverse activities, diverse regions, and I guess an interesting place to start is in the nature of the industry itself. In the toy market, for anyone that's got kids, moves very quickly. New characters come along, new trends, new films. That must create a need to innovate at pace. What kind of challenges are specifically given to you in the manufacturing engineering space as a result of that?
Yeah. One of them, you're completely right. The innovation rate, Lego relaunch our portfolio of final goods, or our total portfolio, around 60% is new novelties, as we call them, every year. It's so newness is a big part of the business of bringing new things to the market, and of course lead time has been always relevant, and we have been, if historically look like Lego have reduced its time to market, and that's a thing we constantly work on, being ready. The toy business is, at least in the western part of the world, dominating by one big event, and that's called Christmas. And that's of course a huge peak for us around the Christmas sales. And you can say there is a complexity in the business that you launch the next year without knowing the result from the previous year.
Yeah.
And that gives a huge pressure on lead time, of course. So then you can adapt your program to whatever trend there is. However, Lego is also, a fantastic consumer base of loyal consumers that enjoy our products. So, but we still, need to bring a lot of new stuff into the market. Of course, that's part of our being.
From what I hear, you're using a lot of IoT in your production and development techniques.
Yeah.
What do you think are the advantages of that technology, and how do you make the most of those advantages?
Yes. I think we have, like many other companies, we have stuff that we have been using before it was called IoT. And then we've also, embarked on a journey to test many things out. I think that one of the major things we see with IoT is data collection and getting data behind stuff that we previously took for more, based on craftsmanship instead of deep data.
Intuition.
And I think that's one of the biggest advantages what we've seen. I think there's a lot of software that come with opportunities also now for, doing more like simulation, digital twin, also, doing much more data analysis that we have done before, and there's opportunities for big data that we can see in the future. So I see there's a lot of good things that could be interesting to deep more into.
So I imagine that level of visibility gives you a way to improve costs and quality. Have you ever been able to achieve that, and if so, how?
I think we constantly improve our especially now I'm talking about the mold business.
Yeah.
If you see what we have been doing, then giving much more data to, of course, give us opportunity to improve the cost of our molds, the quality of them, and also the delivery time. And all that is based on that we get data that we did not have just a few years ago.
And I'm interested in those aspects you're describing. How recently have they come into play, and have you been able to take advantage of them? Because I think there's still some mystery around some organizations and sectors are very well advanced in using IoT and others are sort of hanging back. So how long have you been really, you feel like gaining that value?
So you could say, I think the last, where it really took off is the last 4 to 5 years, where, I think the overall organization in Lego have been more and more interested, and our recent CEO and COO have also formulated, our COO have put a big ambitions into how we should utilize that. As I said, in the doing molds, we probably have been ahead of some of the things before it was called IoT.
Yeah.
So it's not unknown for, the molding business using sensors, technologies and stuff like that. And we also currently looking at software that could help us much more in that direction when we optimize our molds.
Okay, and you mentioned briefly that your CEO had sort of been quite committed to use this approach. And do you feel that's where this change has to come from?
Yeah, I definitely have. My experience is that a lot of the innovation probably come from within the organization and more bottom up, but senior level sponsorship and interest for this is for sure, like many other things, very, very relevant and almost things that needs to be there so we can succeed on this. So that's my experience.
Yeah, and you mentioned sometimes it's bottom up, sometimes it's top down. Are there challenges in explaining a new technology or something to let's say the top level of management who have more of a strategic view, who may not be as hands-on obviously with the technology? How do you...
I think that has been part of our organization that has been super good at doing showcases. Okay. And those showcases had I think awakened a lot of curiosity from our C-level to understand the need of this, and of course they also hear the hype that's going around on the opportunities here. So I think and we also experienced that there is more and more interest for the topic.
And how important is it to get that kind of buy-in both from the leadership side of the business as well as from the people on the shop floor with regards to new technology?
Yeah, I think that's super relevant. I think, what I've experienced that people on the shop floor, they are very, very keen in learning these new things, that they've been showing a lot of interest. And I think probably also speak to Legos, they're super engaged in every improvement we can find out. In general, I also see the leadership teams around the company being very relevant. Thinking this is very relevant. Of course, more how can they use it in their agenda and how can they apply the different technologies.
Yeah.
And what would you say looking ahead, where do you see manufacturing in the next, 5 to 10 years time? What kind of emerging technologies do you think are going to be mainstream and offer new opportunities?
Of course, this about connecting all your different equipment. I think that's interesting. Finding, like any other company, Lego also have equipment that is years old. You need to find the protocol that can, or the whole cybersecurity around getting connected, getting your supply chain connected as well. So it's not, only within the company, but also much more broad. I think that's present a huge opportunity. I think the emerging of sensors and robotics, almost like we have this conversation, robotics are getting cheaper. So there is and many things that will change the shop floor, and I think that's also what's been said by many, and I think that also what we experience, where data will be presented much more for the operator, and instead of the operator looking for data, then there will be much more things that the operator needs to decide, and based on the data we gather from the processes we do.
I'm interested that you mentioned the supply chain briefly there, and increasingly the conversations we're having talking about value chains as opposed to supply chains or manufacturing. How do you get the supply chain partners on board if you're looking for complete visibility along your value chain? You need their help. Have you? And it sounds like Lego, with 4 or 5 years IoT experience involved, maybe a further along this journey than other organisations. So, how have you managed to get those kind of partnerships going?
I don't think we're that far in totally enabling, our full supply chain, also using external partners. I think our focus has also been really to understand something internal first, and then we have made a few pilots. We made a pilot with one of our, and also did with one of our mold suppliers, where they upload data on shipping data and logistic data into the cloud, and then we can see it immediately. And then you can always discuss this. There will be a lot of security around that, and that's of course been one of the things that we have to figure out.
Yeah, and with all this new emerging technology, and we talk about the future of manufacturing and tech and so forth. What about the employees? Do you think that the future of manufacturing will require a different type of employee? I mean, are you hiring people perhaps that were different than you were hiring 5 years ago? What do they look like?
I definitely think, the existing employees we have, they are super skilled, and I think there are many of these tools they can take upon them with the right training. I do also see we start to hire people with deep insight into not necessarily molding and understand the mold, but much more analytical people.
Right.
So I think it will be a combination of people that are deep functionally into the industry I'm part of, and then we will get new resources on board that have more I think a broad term we'll call it data technology background.
Right. Okay. And do you think that those people are readily available? I mean, how attractive is the manufacturing industry for that type of employee?
Yeah, I think Lego have been lucky many times that, or it's not luck, but it's also hard work that we are, generally we are in Denmark seen as a very attractive workforce. But I agree with you, the manufacturing industry as a general need to do something to dust off, to attract these people, because there are many other businesses, that it's more interesting to understand, consumer behavior. And much more on a social media is probably for many more interesting than looking into process data and see variances on a manufacturing process, if you understand what I mean.
Yeah.
So of course there is a hunt for that talent. I agree with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in terms of the agendas, which certainly are increasingly appealing and important in terms of the mission of a company, I know something that's very central to Lego's ethos is around its sustainability agenda, its carbon footprint agenda. Now that's going to create some very specific challenges for you in the manufacturing engineering space. So how does the work your part of the organization is doing support those bigger corporate goals in that agenda?
Yeah, and of course we are also supporting Lego's sustainability agenda with all we can. And data. When you change your material or adapt your material to new standard is very important, because there is a design of Lego brick that is born based on a certain material, and of course we need to make sure that functionality that is required from that Lego brick stays. So that's where data and simulation comes in. Lego has for years done a lot of what we call computer-aided engineering.
Yeah.
And that's, where you use algorithm to see how the flow of material go into a mold. And that becomes even more relevant in this situation where you test for new materials as well.
Sure. And then I guess another point is around how you roll out these new innovative processes more widely. I mean, Lego has a huge footprint that you've already talked about with manufacturing facilities around the world. How do you manage the implementation and scalability of that kind of innovation when you've got
the real practicalities of it, really, you know, especially when
Yeah,
you talk about, you manage so many different, you've got cultural barriers, language
yeah,
barriers,
yeah, yeah.
geographical barriers. How do you overcome that?
Yeah, what we have done in, especially when we in the mold, is a lot around standards and guidelines.
Right.
So that's been our success. For example, and we started in Singapore for what's that? More or less 1.5 years ago, or 2 years ago, and we have onboarded up to 16 new colleagues there, and that has been possible to do by having strict standards and know in the process what they're doing. So I agree with you that that's also where IoT plays, I think, a future role, than the onboarding and training of people will simply be easier. You can do much more remote,
Yeah.
and and you also see, I think, we start to see that benefit a lot from what technology help us in onboarding new people. But yeah, to get above or get up. Solve some of the barriers you talked about on culture and language and time difference. That technology has a big opportunity here.
And looking further ahead into the future, which of those kind of emerging technologies, aside from IoT, which you seem to be quite well down that journey on, what might be next on the horizon where you can perhaps push some new barriers or explore some new opportunities? Is there anything that strikes you as being particularly strong there?
I still think Lego will be in injection molding also in the future. I don't. I think that's difficult to answer. What other technologies might come? A lot have been painted under the umbrella of IoT. I definitely see, in the mold business, I see automation and robotics. I know that's under IoT being, things that and stuff that are connected that was not connected before. So it probably falls under IoT umbrella. Is what is moving. I don't think the traditional molding industry in itself are moving so much. I think that they're also on the journey of using data to improve their machines and processes.
Do you know, we talked a little about, you said something about how the manufacturing industry has to dust its cobwebs a little bit to try to attract new talent into the industry. Yet there's a lot of innovation taking place. It's there's a lot of things that are really exciting for young people, like robotics and like the things that we talk about now, more connected devices. Not only that, but also a consumer-driven environment that makes manufacturing a little bit faster, moving faster, supply chains that are more connected. What do you think the industry can do as a whole, not specific to your company, but as a whole, to attract more people into that space?
Yeah, and this is not a commercial, but what we have done as for Lego is joining some of the initiative days to attract more young people to study engineering, for example.
Yeah.
Doing much more internships, showing that it's not so boring.
Yeah.
Because it's actually super interesting. There's a lot of challenges and people can learn a lot from. So I think that's the industry obligation, that you open a little bit more up for being flexible of how you onboard your people. Get out to these conferences. Many universities arrange for new students and new graduates. Being part of the global initiative, one of the things we currently looking into I think around 130 university professors that are in a conference. Soon we go there and tell about what we do, so they can go and tell the students. So I think it's not to point to any of my colleagues in the industry, but I think a lot of industry can do much more in telling what they do, because that would actually attract more young people.
Well, that's attracting them into the space, but what do you do to keep them? Once you have them?
I think that is our obligation, to make sure that the jobs keep being exciting, right? And I think toy business has been lucky that there's a lot of things you can work with. But I agree that is, I don't think there's an easy answer to how to keep them. It has to be that the tasks and the assignments they get, they keep them staying and not, leaving the job again.
Yeah. Well, we know that the time we spend with manufacturers and the kind of, the next generation manufacturing is exciting. So I think you're right. We need to all help to tell that story a bit more in order to make sure that the best talent can come into manufacturing and not just go into Facebook or Google or these other tech companies. I guess Lego's got a great brand and a fun product, so that helps. But we still need to tell those stories, right? Well, yes, but
we also need to tell the stories to the engineers, right? Because they're really skilled engineers, and they can get there's a lot of open positions for them. So we also need to tell them that we have an exciting job. And I think actually that this about combining deep mechanical functional skills, as the background I come from, with much more IT, and I think that, and maybe even design, that opens up for new job combinations and new type of engineers that is much more appealing to many young people.
Yeah.
Because, if we call them digital native, a lot of those that are coming into the job market or into job market now. And I can see how the old mechanical world looks boring, but actually I think when they get into it, they actually can see it's actually, there's
Yeah, we've got to open that window though, because I think just a day, like you said, a day spent in a really modern, cutting-edge manufacturing facility would change a lot of minds. But there, or until they see it, they can't.
Do you think companies are adapting to a new way of working as well? If you are going to attract millennials or more women into the field or into the manufacturing space, do you think that companies have a way to go in terms of working practices, training, development, support, etc.?
Yeah. I definitely think there's a way to go, and I think I can see positively. We do a lot of toolmaker and also toolmaker educations, and year after year we see. Now you mentioned women, and I see. I think alone that diversity would also make the industry more. Diversity often makes workplaces much more exciting, and you get new viewpoints, and So I think that. But I agree with you, industry need to show, as I said before, they need to adapt also to a new generation where they are more, probably more demanding than the generation was before them.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, there's never been a more exciting time with all the disruptive technology out there. So this is a great opportunity.
Yeah,
fully agree.
And hopefully our conversation will help to open a few eyes. And I think that a company like Lego that does have visibility is pushing towards that future is really exciting. So Jesper, thanks so much. We've had a really great conversation here, and seeing what comes from Lego's manufacturing facilities in the future. I know my kids are.
Hopefully.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Welcome, and great talking to you.